Good evening, I'm Bakhtiar Sanwa and you're watching AnewZ. Let's see the top stories shaping our world. US President Donald Trump says he reduces the 50-day deadline he gave Russia over its war in Ukraine. The United States and European Union avoid a trade war with a 15% tariff deal. Thailand and Cambodia have agreed to an immediate and unconditional ceasefire effective from midnight. US President Donald Trump has met with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer in Scotland. The leaders discussed Ukraine, Gaza and trade.
US President Donald Trump met with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer during his visit to Scotland, where the two leaders discussed trade, the war in Ukraine and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Trump announced plans to set a new deadline for Russia to make progress toward ending the war in Ukraine. He warned that if no progress is made, he will impose sanctions on Russia and on buyers of its exports.
I'd say 10 to 12 days. I'll announce it probably tonight or tomorrow. But there's no reason to wait. If you know what the answer is going to be, why wait? And it would be sanctions and maybe tariffs, secondary tariffs. You know what a secondary tariff is.
The leaders also commented on the conflict in Gaza. Trump said the situation had shifted following the decision by the US and Israel to withdraw from ceasefire talks in Doha, accusing Hamas of not negotiating in good faith.
And now possibly the fight will have to be a little bit different, but they have totally changed now. They don't want to give hostages. Very unfair. You have 20 living people, in this case living. You have many dead people too that they want to get
a long time as well.
Yeah, they have 20 living people, and I told Israel, I told Bibi that you're going to have to now maybe do it a different way.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called for an absolute ceasefire and stressed the need to increase aid to Gaza. His remarks came as Israel announced daily pauses in military operations for 10 hours in parts of the enclave, while Jordan and the United Arab Emirates carried out aid airdrops.
Nobody wants to see that, and I think people in Britain are revolted at seeing what they're seeing on their screens. So we've got to get to that ceasefire, and thank you, Mr. President, for leading on that, and also to just get more and more aid in. And again, America's done a lot on this, a lot of countries have done a lot. We're now working with Jordan on getting direct aid drops in, but this is a desperate situation.
Despite growing international concern, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has claimed there is no starvation in Gaza. The meeting between Trump and Starmer comes a day after Trump announced a trade deal with the European Union.
The United States and the European Union have struck a trade deal to avoid crippling tariffs. President Donald Trump and the President of the European Commission announced the agreement on Sunday, which will see EU goods taxed at 15%. Nick Harper has more from Washington, D.C.
It's taken 4 months of intense negotiations, but going into this weekend there was a renewed sense of optimism that the US and the EU was close to achieving a deal. Donald Trump is in Scotland on a 4-day golfing and business trip, and on Sunday Ursula von der Leyen, the EU chief, visited him at one of his Scottish golf courses. Before their closed-door meeting, both leaders said there was a 50-50 chance of achieving a deal, but just over an hour later they came out to announce what they said was the largest trade deal ever achieved. Trade between the 27-member bloc and the United States last year totaled almost $2 trillion. Donald Trump achieved a 15% tariff rate for European goods entering the United States. He had threatened 30% if a deal was not done by his August 1st deadline. So it is a better rate than threatened, but it's certainly not the 0% rate that the Europeans were pushing for. There are some exceptions as well. Pharmaceuticals are not included in this deal. Neither is European steel and aluminium. Steel and aluminium will remain at a 50% rate. The EU also agreed to buy US military equipment, to buy $750 billion worth of US energy, and to make $600 billion of investments in the United States. Ursula von der Leyen said it had achieved a stability and predictability that was needed in the trading relationship between the two countries. But when asked what concessions the US had made, she dodged the question, instead saying that this had achieved rebalance when before there was imbalance. That August 1st deadline is fast approaching, with countries around the world looking to try and do deals with the United States. Donald Trump on Sunday said he's looking at deals with 3 or 4 other countries. Those could come in the coming days. Nick Harper for AnewZ in Washington, D.C.
And our William Denslow has more from Brussels regarding the US-EU trade deal.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says that this framework trade agreement reached with the US will provide stability and predictability after weeks of uncertainty over whether a new tariff rate by August 1st would come into effect, which would mean baseline tariffs would raise to 30%. That has been staved off with this new agreement that means that going forward 70% or so of European exports heading to the United States will be subject to a 15% duty. That's set to be worth roughly just shy of $450 billion. There are some exemptions, so-called zero for zero, including some critical sectors, aircraft parts, chemicals and semiconductors. Things that are not included in this 15% steel, that will be subject to a 50% duty. The Trump administration has long maintained that this relationship, the largest bilateral trading relationship in the world, accounting for nearly 30% or so of global trade, is unfair. To help address that, the EU says that it will purchase roughly $750 billion when it comes to US energy, including things like liquefied natural gas, oil, as well as certain nuclear components, and as well as a $600 billion increased investment in the US that will go towards things like the defense sector. There has been plenty of reaction coming in. We've heard from France's Prime Minister François Bayrou, who says that this is a dark day for Europe, saying that they had been moved into submission by Washington. I've been speaking to some industry experts here in Brussels, a representative for the metals sector saying they're limited in their satisfaction. What they want going forward are more details and for things to now progress at a timely manner. The message we've heard from Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission President, she says that while 15% is not to be underestimated, important to know this is far higher than the average tariff rate that was in place before Donald Trump took office. But she says that despite this, and despite the EU consistently calling tariffs a tax that are harmful for consumers and businesses on both sides of the Atlantic, despite that, she says it was the best deal we could get and at least provides a period of stability after so many unknowns over the last few weeks and months. William Denslow, AnewZ, Brussels.
European Union stocks rise to a 4-month high after the United States and EU strike a trade agreement. The EU-US trade agreement reached just before the August 1st deadline sets a 15% tariff on most EU goods and includes a €600 billion investment in the United States, while tariffs on spirits remain under negotiation. Auto stocks rose sharply. Porsche, Mercedes-Benz, Stellantis and Volvo cars all advanced between 1.6% and 3% respectively. Pharmaceutical shares also strengthened, with Novo Nordisk and Roche each climbing more than 1.5%. Top US and Chinese officials resumed talks in Stockholm on Monday to try and tackle long-standing economic disputes at the center of a trade war between the world's top economies. The talks intend to build on earlier agreements made in Geneva and London, which temporarily capped reciprocal tariffs at roughly 30 to 50% on US imports and around 10% on Chinese goods. If no deal is reached by the 12th of August, tariffs could surge back to triple-digit levels, disrupting global supply chains. Thailand and Cambodia have agreed to an immediate and unconditional ceasefire following emergency talks hosted in Kuala Lumpur by Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. Acting Prime Minister of Thailand and Cambodian Prime Minister have participated in the mediation, which received backing from key international players, including ASEAN, the US and China. Both leaders agreed to halt hostilities and resume direct communications. Despite ongoing shelling and claims of ceasefire violations earlier in the day, both sides signed on the ceasefire initiative, emphasizing the urgency to restore peace along the disputed border.
And security.
The roots of the Thailand-Cambodia conflict run deep, tied to colonial era borders, temple ownership and decades of disputed territory. As the two sides now agree to a fragile ceasefire, we take a closer look at the long-standing tensions fueling the crisis.
The conflict's roots go back to colonial-era borders drawn by French authorities in 1907. At that time, Thailand, then Siam, was pressured by France to sign a treaty that included a map placing the ancient Preah Vihear temple inside Cambodian territory. Cambodia views this map as legally binding and has used it to support its claims. Thailand disputes the map's accuracy and the treaty's validity, saying it was signed under pressure and never fully approved. Tensions rose sharply in 2008 after Cambodia listed the temple as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This triggered strong nationalist backlash in Thailand. That year, Thai soldiers reportedly moved near a disputed pagoda close to the temple. Cambodia claims this land, but Thailand says the border there was never fully marked. The dispute stems from a 1962 International Court of Justice ruling. The court awarded ownership of the temple to Cambodia by a 9-3 vote. Since then, clashes have happened sporadically, causing casualties on both sides. The latest escalation began in May, after a Cambodian soldier was killed during a border skirmish. Both countries have since imposed trade bans, withdrawn ambassadors, and reinforced their military presence.
Wildfires continue to rage in the Turkish northwestern Bursa province. Thousands of people have evacuated from several neighborhoods as air and ground crews battle the flames. High temperatures and winds have fueled the spread of fire. More than 1,700 people have been evacuated as a precaution. Around 1,000 firefighters are working on containing the blaze with air support. Google says it failed to warn more than 10 million people in Turkey about a deadly earthquake in 2023, which killed at least 55,000 people. The tech giant's researchers reported in the Science Journal that its earthquake alert system's warnings were delivered to only 469 people. More than 100,000 people were injured when the quake struck the region in the early hours in February 2 years ago. Google has since updated the detection algorithms, but stresses its alerts are meant to support, not replace, national systems. Tensions rise again in the South Caucasus as NATO's Agile Spirit 2025 military drills continue in Georgia and Turkey. The exercise aimed to boost defense cooperation, but South Ossetia's de facto authorities call them a direct threat. Nini Nikolaishvili reports from Batumi, Georgia.
The de facto authorities of South Ossetia has once again condemned NATO's Agile Spirit military exercises, calling the 2025 edition a direct threat to its security and that of the entire South Caucasus. The statement issued during the ongoing drills, which runs from July 25 to August 6, Trinoli warned that the presence of NATO's forces, including U.S. National Guard troops and Georgia's defense forces, demonstrates a clear strategic intent, not peacekeeping. Those exercises are now on their 12th round and include military aviation and equipment from the multiple NATO member states. According to the de facto authorities, such large-scale activity in the conflict zones risk escalating military political tensions, especially while talks on non-use of the force agreement between Tbilisi, South Ossetia and Abkhazia remain stalled. Agile Spirit 2025 started in Turkey on July 21 with the U.S.-Turkish airborne operation near Adana. Later, the drills moved to Georgia and involves troops from over 10 countries and 2 multinational units. Georgia's defense ministry says that it aims to strengthen regional security, not provoking. Still, Trinoli's criticism mirrors past years, the part of the broader narrative opposing the NATO's presence in the region. While these exercises are framed by the West as the standard cooperation, their geopolitical weight continue to stir unease amongst the de facto authorities of the breakaway regions officially recognized as part of Georgia. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Batumi, AnewZ.
A senior advisor to Iran's supreme leader called the Zangezur Corridor project a cover for broader projects aiming to undermine Iran's national security. He said the objective of the corridor is to sever Iran's link with the Caucasus and impose a land blockade on Iran and Russia. He added that Iran has opposed such actions from the outset, even deploying forces to the borders and conducting deterrent exercises. Iran's former foreign minister has called the Zangezur corridor a geopolitical threat, warning it could pave the way for NATO's presence near Iran's northern borders. Tehran remains strongly opposed to the project. Joining me from Tehran, Turaj Shrelilo.
Former Foreign Minister Ali Akbar Velayati said the main objective of such plans is to provide a platform for NATO's influence in South Caucasia, the Caspian Sea, Central Asia and East Turkestan, a scenario which he said some American politicians and pan-Turkists in Turkey have also explicitly acknowledged. His statement was made in a written message to participants of a conference in Ardebil province in Iran to commemorate the 13th century Sufi master Sheikh Safiuddin Ardebili. The government of President Masoud Pezeshkian has announced a policy of closer ties with the neighboring countries, including Azerbaijani government. However, it has serious geopolitical concerns about Zangezur transport route planned to connect mainland Republic of Azerbaijan with its enclave of Nakhchivan through a 43-kilometer section of Armenia's Siuvnik region. The government in Tehran says it also supports opening of communications and transportation routes in the region, but it has opposed the Zangezur corridor, seeing it as an attempt for a change in international borders. Iran also views the corridor as a potential threat to disconnect it from European across Armenian and Russian territories. According to Mr. Velayati, the Zangezur plan, which was put forward under Biden administration in the United States as the Ukrainian alternative, aims to build a military wall in northern Iran consisting of NATO forces to simultaneously encircle Russia from the south and Iran from the north. Turaj Shrelilo, reporting for AnewZ TV, Tehran.
And previously we spoke with Mohammad Mamadov, research fellow at Topchubashov Center in Baku, Azerbaijan, regarding the Iranian military drills, which were, according to Iran, concluded to counter the Zangezur corridor plan.
Well, it's not the first time Iranian advisors to the Iranian supreme leaders have been making these kinds of comments. After Second Karabakh War in 2020 and 2022, it was another advisor, Kemal Karazi, who actually adopted the term. Who called the Zangezur corridor as NATO's Turan corridor. So now in 2023, Velayati also shared his ideas about a corridor in a similar fashion, but at that time the emphasis was mostly about the growing Israeli presence along Iran's northern borders. And at the same time, Iran was talking about its concerns and red lines about changing maps of the South Caucasus. But now Velayati is openly saying this because of the shifting geopolitical realities of the region after the second 12-day war in June between Iran and Israel. I think two reasons are behind his comments. The first one is geoeconomic. Now Iran is increasingly isolated in the region in geoeconomic terms. Turkish-supported Iraq Development Road is opening Iraq to the Asia, Middle East, Europe corridor that will isolate Iranian ports and railroad network, and at the same time, Zangezur corridor will isolate Iran because the east-west route will mostly run through Central Asia and the South Caucasus. And geopolitically, Iranian side believes that Turkey's growing successes in other geopolitical theaters like Syria, Libya, Iraq, and at the same time, recent normalization with PKK will translate its growing presence in the South Caucasus in terms of opening the Zangezur corridor. So they are calling it are linking it to NATO so that they can get support from Russia and China, who are also openly concerned about the NATO's expansion toward eastward.
Ukraine's Naftogaz has signed its first agreement with Socar Energy Ukraine, part of Azerbaijan's state-oil company, for the purchase of Azerbaijani natural gas. Naftogaz says a test shipment of gas is being delivered through the Trans-Balkan route along the Bulgaria-Romania-Ukraine corridor for the first time. Chief Executive Officer of Naftogaz, Sergei Koretsky, said that while the initial volume is small, the company calls it a strategically important step toward long-term cooperation and greater energy security. The move is part of a wider regional effort supported by gas operators from Greece to Moldova to offer new supply routes and diversify Europe's energy sources. Istanbul's historic noun Hagia Sophia is turning to cutting-edge technology to secure its ancient legacy as it welcomes millions of visitors each year. Our correspondent AnewZ has more on this report.
The iconic 1,500-year-old Hagia Sophia Mosque has now been equipped with an AI-supported security system, featuring hundreds of upgraded cameras throughout the monument. According to Deputy Director at Istanbul's Foundations Authority, Levent Çetin, the smart system can instantly detect unauthorized access to restricted areas, alerting staff for rapid intervention. This is aimed at preserving the historic structure while also ensuring safety for worshippers and tourists alike. Since its reconversion into a mosque in 2020, Hagia Sophia has implemented a detailed visitor management plan, balancing accessibility with preservation. Entry and exit points have been reorganized to prevent crowding, while sensitive features like ancient mosaics are now protected by physical barriers, allowing controlled access to select galleries. Beyond security, the site also features an audio guide system in 23 languages, enhancing the visitor experience without disrupting religious activities. Until now, ongoing restoration projects on the main dome, minarets, and nearby historic structures continue under expert supervision. With artificial intelligence now part of its preservation efforts, the Hagia Sophia is blending heritage and high tech to ensure its legacy endures for generations to come. For AnewZ, this is AnewZ, Istanbul, Turkey.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and have a lovely evening.